In 1973, the Vanderbilt family held a reunion at the university that bore their name. 120 descendants of the man who once controlled more wealth than the United States Treasury. Not one of them was a millionaire. This is not a story about bad luck. It is not a story about a crash, or a war, or a theft. This is the story of how a fortune built in a single lifetime, the largest private fortune in American history, was dismantled by the very people who inherited it. Cornelius Vanderbilt started with nothing. A $100 loan, a small boat, and an obsession with moving faster than anyone alive. By the time he died, he controlled the railroads that moved America. But he could not control what came after. Because the thing that kills dynasties is never the enemy outside. It is the appetite inside. The marble, the parties, the houses that cost more than nations. And the one question no Vanderbilt ever thought to ask: what happens when the money runs out? To understand it, we have to go back to where it all began. Before the marble, before Newport, before the chandeliers. To a boy on Staten Island who understood one thing better than anyone around him. Speed was power. America in 1810 was still raw. Roads turned to mud. Cities were young. Commerce moved slowly. And whoever controlled movement controlled money. Cornelius Vanderbilt was 16 when he borrowed $100 from his mother and bought a small ferry boat to carry passengers between Staten Island and Manhattan. He did not look like a gentleman. He did not speak like one. He worked before sunrise, after dark, through bad weather, and worse competition. He charged less. He moved faster. He learned every current, every dock, every weakness in the men around him. In his first year, he earned $1,000. That was the beginning of the Vanderbilt method. Cut the price, increase the speed, break the competitor, own the route. By 1817, steamboats were changing the country. Vanderbilt moved with them. He worked for Thomas Gibbons, a man fighting the New York steamboat monopoly. And when the courts finally broke that monopoly open in 1824, Vanderbilt was already standing exactly where he needed to be. He knew the routes. He knew the customers. He knew the law had opened a door. He walked through it. He did not wait for permission. When rivals tried to freeze him out, he answered with lower fares. When they challenged him in court, he kept the boats moving. When passengers hesitated, he made speed the argument. A Vanderbilt ticket did not promise elegance. It promised arrival before the other man. The Hudson River became his first kingdom, then Long Island Sound, then the Atlantic coast. During the California Gold Rush, when thousands were desperate to reach the West, Vanderbilt saw a shortcut through Nicaragua. Not Panama, Nicaragua. Faster, cheaper, more dangerous, more profitable. He built the route and took the money. By the end of the Civil War, most men his age were thinking about retirement. Vanderbilt was nearly 70. Instead, he changed weapons. He sold ships and bought railroads. The New York and Harlem, the Hudson River Railroad, the New York Central. He pulled lines together until they formed one great steel artery from New York toward the interior of America. Ships had made him rich. Railroads made him untouchable. By 1877, Cornelius Vanderbilt was worth about $100, a million a fortune, so large that, measured against the size of the American economy, it has been compared to more than $200 billion today. And yet the old man trusted almost no one. He had 13 children. He trusted one. William Henry Vanderbilt was not the son the Commodore seemed built to admire. Cornelius was violent, blunt, volcanic. William was quieter, slower, more careful. For years, his father pushed him aside and sent him to manage a farm on Staten Island. It looked like an insult. William turned the failing farm profitable. Cornelius noticed. Then came the Staten Island Railroad. Then larger responsibilities. Then the full machinery of the empire. When Cornelius died in January 1877, he left nearly everything to William Henry, roughly $90 million of the estate. The other heirs received comparatively little. One son, Cornelius Jeremiah, challenged the will, claiming the Commodore was not of sound mind. The family name entered court. The newspapers watched. The fortune trembled. William Henry settled the case privately. The empire stayed intact. Then he did what no one expected. He doubled it. In only 8 years, William Henry Vanderbilt turned roughly $100 million into $200 million. He was not the fighter his father had been. He was an operator. He consolidated routes, tightened expenses, improved the railroads, and protected the machine. By the mid-1880s, he was the richest man in America. And that was the dangerous moment. Because the Vanderbilt fortune had reached the top before the family had learned how to survive being seen at the top. The old aristocracy of New York did not welcome new money. It tolerated money, but it worshipped pedigree. The Astors, the Belmonts, the old families built their world like a private fortress. Caroline Astor controlled the gate. Her list of 400 names defined who mattered. The Vanderbilts had money. They did not yet have permission. Alva Vanderbilt decided to buy the key. She was married to William K. Vanderbilt, one of William Henry's sons, and she understood the battlefield better than most of the men around her. In New York, power was not only railroad stock. It was a ballroom, a calling card, a stairway wide enough for society to climb. At 660 Fifth Avenue, she built a French chateau in the middle of Manhattan. 60 rooms, stone, glass, carved wood, imported splendor. It cost $3 million. Then, on the 26th of March 1883, she opened the doors. The Vanderbilt ball was not a party. It was an invasion. 1,200 guests arrived in costume. The newspapers covered it like a national event. New York society came because absence would have been social suicide. Caroline Astor, who had never properly acknowledged the Vanderbilts, sent her calling card. The wall cracked. The Vanderbilts were in. But Alva had purchased more than acceptance. She had purchased a new standard. And once a dynasty begins spending to prove it belongs, the bill never ends. The houses came like monuments after a conquest. The breakers in Newport, built for Cornelius Vanderbilt II, rose like an American palace above the Atlantic. 70 rooms, its own power plant. A staff to maintain a summer residence used for only part of the year. Marble House followed, then Belcourt, then Florham. Fifth Avenue filled with Vanderbilt facades. Newport filled with Vanderbilt shadows. The family had transformed wealth into architecture. Before the ball, the Astor world still treated the Vanderbilts as intruders with money too new to be sacred. After the ball, the newspapers described costumes, diamonds, carriages, and staircases as if a monarchy had appeared overnight in Manhattan. Guests did not merely enter a house, they entered a message. Alva had forced the city to look. That was her victory. But victory changed the family atmosphere. The Vanderbilt name no longer had to defeat competitors on rivers or rails. Now it had to defeat other rich families at dinner tables, opera boxes, and summer resorts. The battlefield had moved from commerce to display, and display had no finish line. Every staircase became a declaration, every dining room a competition, every season another performance that had to be larger than the last. And beneath the marble, the first cracks were forming. Railroads were still powerful, but the age of total freedom was ending. The Interstate Commerce Act of 1887, the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890. Government was building the legal machinery to limit the kind of power Cornelius Vanderbilt had created. The income was still enormous, but the appetite was becoming larger than the engine. Then William Henry made the decision that changed everything. He divided the fortune. Cornelius had kept the empire concentrated because he understood something brutal. A fortune is strongest when it moves as one body. William Henry, surrounded by children and expectations, did the opposite. When he died in 1885, his $200 million fortune was split among 8 children. On paper, they were still unimaginably rich. In reality, the machine had been cut into pieces. The empire could have entered a new century smaller, harder, and more disciplined. It could have sold vanity before selling productive assets. It could have turned prestige into capital. Instead, the family protected the image until the image began eating the estate. Cornelius II and William K. received the largest shares, but the family was no longer a single command structure. It was 8 rivers flowing away from the source, 8 households, 8 social calendars, 8 sets of mansions, 8 circles of heirs, spouses, divorces, dowries, and servants. The second generation had built the palace. The third generation inherited the bill. They had grown up inside wealth so total that it felt like weather. Servants were there, houses were there, railroads were there. Money was not something built by violence, risk, and discipline. It was simply the condition of being Vanderbilt. That illusion was fatal. Cornelius II spent millions on the breakers. William K. spent a fortune on Marble House for Alva, who later divorced him, kept the house, and married another man. Their daughter Consuelo was pushed into marriage with the Duke of Marlborough, carrying a dowry of $2.5 million in cash and annual payments large enough to help rescue an English palace. It looked like a royal alliance. It was a transfer of Vanderbilt capital into European stone. The family was not just spending money, it was exporting the fortune into other people's symbols. The old Commodore had used money as a weapon. His descendants used it as proof. Proof that they belonged. Proof that they were noble. Proof that the sneers of the old aristocracy had been wrong. But proof is expensive, and it produces nothing. By the 1920s, many Vanderbilt heirs were no longer living on growth. They were living on capital. The principal itself was being consumed. Maintaining a mansion required servants, repairs, taxes, heat, light, horses, cars, wardrobes, travel, and entire invisible armies of labor. A palace does not merely cost money to build. It charges rent forever. That is why the fall did not need an assassin. It only needed time, inheritance law, and a family determined to live inside a monument instead of a business. Imagine the accounts moving across a mahogany desk. Income on one side, expenses on the other. A house in Newport, a house in Manhattan, a European trip, a daughter's marriage, a son's debts, a roof repair, a staff payroll, a tax notice, another season, another dinner, another winter, with rooms heated only so the house would not decay. Nothing in that ledger looked like catastrophe by itself. That was the danger. Every decision could be defended. The house had to be maintained. The name had to be represented. The family had obligations. The season could not simply be abandoned. A Vanderbilt could not live small without making the collapse visible. So they did what declining dynasties often do. They paid to keep the illusion alive. The collapse did not arrive as a thunderclap. It arrived as paperwork. A property transferred, a staff reduced, a wing closed for the winter, a house sold quietly, a trust restructured, a lawyer advising that something beautiful had become impossible to keep. In 1925, one of the great Vanderbilt residences at 640 Fifth Avenue was demolished. William Henry's massive family house, once a symbol of arrival, gave way to commercial real estate. A palace became income. That was not just a sale. It was a confession. Through the 1920s and 1930s, the family landscape began disappearing. Mansions were sold, converted, divided, demolished. Some became clubs, some became apartments. Some vanished under office buildings. The rooms where social triumph had once been performed became liabilities measured in maintenance costs. Then came 1929. The stock market crash did not create the Vanderbilt collapse, but it accelerated what was already underway. Railroad holdings weakened. Trusts lost strength. The national economy convulsed. Families who had been quietly spending down principal discovered that principal could fall faster than pride. Servants left. Houses darkened. The Newport season began to fade. The world had changed. The Vanderbilts had not changed with it. Inside those houses, the change would have been felt before it was announced. Fewer flowers in the hallway, fewer horses in the stable, a closed guest room, a dinner served with less ceremony, a servant who was not replaced, silver taken out less often, curtains drawn in rooms no one could afford to use. The public saw marble. The family saw invoices. By the time Gloria Vanderbilt was born in 1924, the name still sounded like unlimited money. But the substance behind the name had thinned. Her father, Reginald Vanderbilt, died when she was a baby, leaving her a trust fund worth millions. To the public, she was an heiress. To the newspapers, she was a spectacle. The custody battle over her became a national drama. Her mother and her aunt fought over the child, the money, and the meaning of the Vanderbilt name. The press called her the poor little rich girl. The phrase survived because it revealed the contradiction. There was wealth, but not security. There was fame, but not shelter. There was a name, but the name could no longer protect the people carrying it. Gloria grew up and worked. She painted, she acted, she designed. She built a fashion business with her own name, because the old fortune was no longer enough to live inside. Her son, Anderson Cooper, later said his mother made it clear there would be no great inheritance waiting for him. The dynasty that had begun with a $100 loan had reached a generation that had to build again from scratch. And then came the reunion. 1973. Vanderbilt University invited the descendants of Cornelius Vanderbilt back to the campus funded by the Commodore's money. 120 people arrived. They gathered under a name that still possessed weight in American life. The institution had survived. The stone had survived. The surname had survived. The fortune had not. Not one millionaire stood among them. That was the final image of the dynasty. Not a fire, not a court sentence, not a bankruptcy headline, but a room full of descendants beneath a famous name with nothing resembling the empire that created it. The money had changed form. Some of it became mansions no longer owned by Vanderbilts. Some became museums. Some became dowries, settlements, repairs, taxes, and demolished walls. Some became university buildings. Some simply vanished into decades of trying to maintain a life designed for income that no longer existed. The Breakers still stands in Newport. Tourists walk through its 70 rooms, looking up at gilded ceilings and chandeliers. They photograph the staircase. They admire the dining room. They imagine the parties. No Vanderbilt comes down those stairs. Fifth Avenue moved on. The great houses disappeared into commercial buildings, storefronts, and modern streets. The city that the Vanderbilts tried so desperately to impress absorbed their monuments and kept moving. That is the strange ending of America's richest dynasty. Not poverty in the ordinary sense. Not ruin with empty pockets and breadlines. Something colder. A fortune so enormous it seemed immortal, converted into objects, buildings, and memories that outlived the family fortune itself. Cornelius Vanderbilt knew how to make money move. He understood steam, rails, pressure, speed. He knew that capital had to work or die. His descendants inherited the result, not the mechanism. They inherited the marble, not the machine. So the Vanderbilt story does not end with a villain entering the house. It ends with the lights going out one room at a time. A ballroom closed. A servant dismissed. A deed signed. A daughter married for status. A mansion handed to preservationists. A family name carved into stone while the family money disappeared behind it. And in the silence of that 1973 reunion, the old Commodore's empire finally revealed what it had become. Not a fortune, a museum. The chandeliers still hang. The name is still there. But the room is empty. And no one is coming down the stairs. If you want to understand how dynasties destroy themselves from the inside, subscribe. Every fortune we follow begins with hunger, discipline, and conquest. But the fall is never just about money. It is about what happens when the next generation inherits the palace but not the fire that built it. In the next episode, we enter the Astor dynasty, the family that ruled New York society, wrote its own social laws, and then sent one of its most important heirs onto the deck of the Titanic. That story does not end the way old money expected. And before you go, tell me in the comments, was the Vanderbilt collapse inevitable the moment the fortune was divided? Or did someone still have a chance to stop it?